Hey guys, in this video I'm going to continue on with exploring the sets I just received from the Elli Buk auction. This time around it's the three lowly Motorola 7-inch sets. Nice trio though, because I got a mahogany, a blonde, and a bakelite. Bakelite being, in my opinion, the hardest to find and the coolest and nicest one to have. They used to show up somewhat regularly on eBay, but I sure haven't seen many lately. Now I do have one, but mine I got for 20 bucks and it was in miserable condition. It was not only completely cracked in half, top and bottom, the two sides were just, or I should say it was split into two pieces completely separated from each other. But it was also mashed, like a big weight had been pushing on it for years, decades, and it deformed it. So it wasn't just a matter of gluing it back together. I had to, put shims in and kind of mush it and stretch it and get it back into shape. And after a few weeks after the initial gluing, it cracked again, and I had to put more reinforcing in there, and I've never really been happy with it. So that is the main reason I bid on these sets. The other reason being that the initial auction start was $250. No takers. The auctioneer then went, I think, to $200, $150, $100, $75, $50, and I figured, well, what the heck? I bid 50 bucks. I got them. Now, there were actually sets at that auction that did not sell. I think if it hadn't sold at 50, they would have just pulled it. There were, I think, 3, 4, maybe more sets that did not sell. Some of them seemed to be kind of nice, but, there were only so many people present at the auction that could haul these away. And I don't know who else besides myself might have been able to arrange shipping, which was not a cheap option. I just got lucky and had somebody local who could pick them up and then bring them over to me. Alright, so enough about that. Here they are. So let's take a look at this one first. It's the one I'm most interested in. Now, they only gave 2 photos at the auction. Of course, I wasn't present to examine them, so I just had to go off of those. But from the front photo, they all looked okay, other than the mahogany set, which we'll get to in a moment. But there's also a photo of the back, and I could see that there was a piece broken out. But I was really keeping my fingers crossed that this broken out piece didn't extend into a big chunk like all the way to the front of the cabinet. And what do you know? That turned out to be the case. That a broken out piece is rather small and self-contained. There is not a crack that, say, extends throughout the cabinet. And where it broke out is actually a real common problem with these sets. It's right where one of the chassis mount screws were. It's 4 holes, or actually 5. 3 up front and 2 in the back. And I've seen sets like this before. Like I have a similar 9T1. When it was shipped, it only had the 2 bolts in the back, none in the front. Well, when shipping, with only 2 of the bolts being in place, it puts a lot of stress. And they both broke right out of the cabinet. I imagine that's what happened here too. In fact, there aren't any screws now. So if you ever want to ship one of these, I recommend you actually either put all the bolts in there and get this thing snug and secure and double box it, or take the chassis out and ship it separately. So I could just leave it like that. I mean, who would ever see it? Or I could maybe patch it in with something. But otherwise, this cabinet's just fine. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to restore this, and this will be my set to keep, and the other set I'll sell off or whatever. Few bad things though. Missing the knobs. This has gold knobs. I think this was the only set they ever made that used those gold knobs. Very, very hard to find. My other set also has no knobs. I got lucky at the Antique Radio Club Swap Fest a year or 2 ago, and I found the 2 outer gold knobs. The inner channel and fine tuning, I only have red knobs that are the same size and shape, but they're red and not gold. But they work. It's also missing the logo. So was my other set, but amazingly somebody had it. And then, I don't know, he sold it to me or gave it to me, whatever. But it's a little squiggle stylized M. I'll show you 2 in a moment. But otherwise, it seems to be in fine condition. This brass, I think it is, grill work. A little piece extends over here, very fine condition. Faceplate looks alright. There's the recessed painted Motorola logo looking nice. Just seems to be surface dust and maybe some real fine scratches. I think this will buff and clean up really nice. Now as for the insides, I can already hear all kinds of crap rattling around inside there. I've taken a peek inside. I'm not expecting much, but I can just pop in the restored TS18 chassis from my other set if I wanted to. Although that chassis, now that one I restored along with one or two other 7-inch Motorola's before I started doing videos, or maybe just my very earliest videos. I guess I did show one or two with that set playing, but nothing about restoration. But in summary, not only was that cabinet cracked in half, but the chassis, which was a TS18, very similar to the TS4, had been somewhat butchered. It looked like somebody was using it as a spare parts repository, and all the critical stuff was there, like the coils, but a lot of bits underneath had been snipped out. So I had to slowly restore it, and although it works, I've never been 100% happy with it. So we'll see whether I use that chassis in this cabinet or whatever. Back's gone, which is a shame, but I think it was fiberboard originally with a whole bunch of holes drilled into it. Maybe I can replicate one someday. I don't think we'll be reusing this power cord. Kind of dangerous. So let's just take that right off. Okay, that's one of the things that was rattling around inside. That's probably one of the screws that had been holding the chassis down. Now, I can also see that I think most, if not all, the tubes are gone. Also, the CRT socket looks miserable. Might be original, I don't know, but I don't recall the other sockets I've seen being quite this messy. Like all this frayed wiring, they have plastic covered wire on them. Which makes me wonder if maybe the original CRT socket was damaged and somebody replaced it and all the wiring. Because it is possible for these to break or for arcing to develop, because there is a fairly high potential in some of these pins. I don't know, but this is kind of ugly. On the positive side, it is copper plated. Some of the TS chassis were copper plated and some were bare steel. I think only the earlier ones were copper plated. So, it's got some value there. There's the ballast tube that should be in there, which is missing. And, ooh, that's... Okay, I'm expecting to see some real ugliness underneath, because this has been recapped, and they did a nasty job. Originally, these would have had cardboard covers over them, because these have some potential on them. The chassis in these actually floats. This is a series strung separate. It doesn't actually have a hot chassis. This is sort of neutral ground, but the outer cans and the capacitor are hot. And it looks like somebody just wrapped some masking tape on them, and they had fiber bases to insulate them from the chassis, and the fiber base is blown out of this one, blown out of this one, and this one's cracked. Maybe somebody just dropped this or something, I don't know. Or those might be replacement caps. It does have the speaker, which is disconnected, so put down the camera for a sec and pull the rest of the chassis out. Well, I just found something very nice inside there, but I'll tease you a little bit, and let's look at the chassis first. It's actually not as bad as I feared it might be. Top side looks terrible. I could probably find some replacement insulating twist lock mounts if need be, but otherwise this is just about all original. Even some of the high voltage caps look to be original. I think only these three black guys, 6,000 volt spray caps, are replacements. So hey, maybe I will restore this. Controls are all there. I've seen some of these with a fine tuning. Tip gets broken off. Now, that's weird. 3 selenium rectifiers for the voltage doubler. Should only have 2. I think these would be the 2 originals, so maybe one went bad, and they put this in? Or did somebody make a tripler out of this? Who knows? Who knows? I hate seeing weird repairs. I don't know what people were thinking sometimes. If one of these was bad, why wouldn't you remove it and put the new one in? Why would you leave the bad one floating around inside to potentially cause trouble? Alright, so what was I happy to see inside the cabinet? You guessed it. It's a piece of broken out Bakelite. So, a little bit of glue, and who would know? In fact, that fits so well, I'm not going to mess with it right now because it needs a little bit of, probably have to spread the cabinet out a little bit to get it to fit in there just right. Very sharp edges where it broke out. As far as glue goes, I've seen some horrible jobs. People just slopped a bunch of whatever glue they had and shoved the piece in there, and excess glue oozed out all over. I admit, once or twice I've used just super glue and nothing else, and if there's not much stress on it at all, I guess that's okay, but if there's going to be some weight, some stress on it, the way I've seen to do it is perhaps use super glue to get it temporarily in place. Oh, there we go, that fits pretty well. On the back side where nobody can see, maybe cut grooves, or cut grooves and then put it like a T at the end, and then fill it in with epoxy, or even put some reinforcing pins to really stitch that back together strongly. And now, the big question, is the CRT any good? Originally there would have been a mask up front. I guess this one's just completely gone. So there's just kind of hanging down, bottoming out. I fabricated a mask in my other one from some closed cell tubular foam. This is what I knew there was something else rattling around inside there. Got myself a vintage pencil from Pennsylvania. So whoever Ralph Inercy Excavating was, got your pencil. Alright, anything else of interest in here? Oh yeah. Ho ho! Oh, all kinds of fun treats in here. There is the gold fine-tuning knob. Now, if I can just find myself the channel knob, I've got a complete set of knobs. But I think that's it. I don't think there's anything left in here except dirt and some crud. It's a mounting post. Would have been for the speaker. Yeah. Mounting post is gone down here. Broke off. Something I really hate about these Bakelite cases is some things like the speaker board. They just push onto pegs that are molded as part of the case, and they put it on these speed nuts. Piece of spring steel with this kind of spikes in it, and they only push on one way and won't come off. When they get stressed, Bakelite always loses, and they just break off. Yeah, you can try gluing it back on, but that's never really going to hold as well as it would have originally. And then just some debris. Now I'm filthy. Take a damp rag in order to clean that out, and I want to get the CRT secured. My fear with these sets getting transported is I know in all three of the CRTs or loses that the necks would have broken, but they all appear to be intact. Whether they're good or not, I don't know, but so far I've never found a dead 7JP4. A dead 8BP4, yeah, on one occasion, but not a 7JP4. The 8BP4 being the 8-inch cousin to this. Actually, before we move on to the other sets, I wanted to mention a couple other things. One is, there is a sheet of asbestos, I think, in all these sets. I just leave them alone. Those go right over the ballast tubes, and if you use an original ballast, they're going to still generate a lot of heat. You want to protect the cabinet. So long as you don't mess with it, start scratching it and make it friable and airborne, I wouldn't worry about it. If you want, I guess there are modern equivalents like you get from furnaces or something. You know, a safe material that's also heat resistant, but I don't worry about it. Another thing I wanted to take a look at was inside here, because I noticed that there's only one nut holding it on. So inside here would be the flyback. Let's see what condition it's in. Yeah, I do have a tube. It's so often the case. Originally there would have been 10 screws holding this on. 4 on either side and 1 on each end. Very often there's only 1 or 2 holding this in. More lazy serviceman, I guess. So, it's not the original rectifier, I'm guessing. Somebody replaced it at some point in its life. And just didn't put any of the screws back in. Alright, so that looks to be good. Sometimes I've seen these where the ceramic pole is cracked, or other types of damage in here, but this looks fine. As for the missing tubes, no big deal. 6AU6s, 12SN7s, 25L6, nothing obscure by any means. So yeah, other than these being a mess, and this, which I'm pretty well convinced has been replaced, it's actually in okay condition. Alright, let's see if we can check out the other two before the sun goes down. Next up, I'll do the blonde. Can't wait to see what goodies lurk inside this. Be awfully nice to find the channel knob. I do have 2 other blonde sets. One, the photo finish or faux finish was really bad, and I ended up re-veneering it. I'm not entirely happy, and I think I'll do it again because I ended up finally finding this type of veneer. The name escapes me at the moment, but it was some type of blonde mahogany something or another. Now the other one is all original finish, and it's in pretty darn good condition, as is this, but I can see right away there's a chunk missing down here, and it's a little rough here. I'll have to check on the other side, but otherwise it looks pretty darn good. Man, I hate these stickers. Yeah, I'll deal with that later. Alright. So what they did is, the sides and the top are veneer. And it looks beautiful when you strip it on the one I did do. It's like a really golden, beautiful color. It really shimmers. However, the original finish is actually a bit dull. And for the front, for a reason that escapes me, it's actually some kind of printed, simulated veneer. Why they couldn't wrap around the same veneer that's on top, I have no clue. And eventually it starts developing cracks and chips off. Alright, so that side's pretty darn good. You can see all the network of cracks in there. So if somebody has far better artistic abilities than me, they might be able to like hand paint something on there. It's like a yellow ochre base, and then kind of a print on there. You can see on the top edge here, the whole piece of wood is painted like a yellow ochre, and then this grain is printed on or somehow rolled on there with like some lighter shades of brown. Alright, so the bottom, unfortunately, is missing on both of these. There should be an aluminum pan that covers the whole bottom. And I can already know I peeked under there earlier that it is gone. So you can stick your hand right into all the components under there. But they both do have backs, which is a nice bonus. And they both have the original power cords. This one, so-so. This is another one that's terrifying, like the 7VT2. You wouldn't ever dream of doing anything with, because insulation's completely falling off. Alright, so a few 1/4-inch nuts holding the back on. Let's pop that back off and take a closer look inside. Right away I can tell this is in better condition inside. That's what an original socket would look like. Plastic insulated wires with kind of an extra layer of insulation as they go into the socket. So here's the original ballast. Well, I don't know if these are original or not, but the few Motorola sets I found that had them in there had something that looked like this. But they do say JFD, not Motorola. And this must be an earlier chassis revision. Yeah, it's the 4H. The earlier revisions of the TS4 chassis had the 303 ballast. They later changed to a different type. These are lousy because they're open to the environment. Sheets of mica in there with coils of resistance wire like a toaster, and they burn out. Well, this is novel. Instead of having mounting screws in there, there's steel wire. A giant twist tie. Screws. This is also the early style high voltage cage where it's a really squared off box. Later style was like the one we saw where it was sort of stamped out and it was all rounded. It's just like spot welded. And just like the other, there's only a single nut holding it on the top. All the screws are gone. But we do have a full complement of tubes, and this is what those three caps are supposed to look like. This one's a little wobbly. These are fairly secure. Oops, I'll disconnect the speaker. Oh, one wire was already popped loose. Alright, so another copper plated chassis. And it's got the usual repairs, which would be high voltage caps being replaced. Oh, that's cute. Oh, not only is it not the right type of cap, but they did a lousy job soldering and it's broken loose. Sangamo. It's a giant mica cap. And it's only rated for 5,000 volts. Test. 2,500 working. They're supposed to be 6,000 volt caps. But that didn't work too well. Otherwise, yeah, I've seen so many of these now. They've all got the orange Mighty Midget cap there, and the rest are a variety of yellowish paper caps. And usually these are replaced. Never saw one mounted like that, though. Usually 5 or 6, depending on the version, mounted going this way. That funky transformer. I think that's a blocking oscillator transformer. And this one just has the two rectifiers. So I think on the other one, actually it was the two outside are the ones that are being used. I think the other one had an extra one in the middle. Strange. But anyways, this one is very restorable, that's for sure. Looks to be all complete and in decent condition. Last thing to check. Let's see the controls. Seem to operate. Oh, I don't see any. No extra goodies inside. No knobs floating around. CRT is pretty securely attached, though. And, well, we'll see the foam gasket in a minute. It needs to have a foam gasket on the front to support the CRT that sag and crack and get hard over time. And, currently, replacements are really not available. This does actually have one sheet metal screw in place. This looks to be in good condition. Might be the original rectifier too. Has it still got that tape on there? Alright, cool. I kind of figured from the photo that I saw at the auction that this would be the best of the group. tempting to try a power up on a Variac, but I've never had any luck or seen anyone have any luck or much luck with powering one of these sets up. Occasionally somebody get a raster for a while before the ballast blows up, or well, it doesn't blow up, it just burns out. But I've never seen an actual image on one. At best maybe you get like a partial raster and that's about it. Maybe some sound. I'll deal with that later. Here's a better look at the front of the cabinet, and that's not bad. As these gaskets go, it's about as good as I've ever seen. A little off center, but quite often they start melting and there's like crud running down the face. So for now we're just going to leave that alone. Which brings us to this miserable set. I say miserable because it's got no front. The cabinet's not so bad though. So there's a better look at that face. Let's see. Rock hard. If you ever do get one and this is kind of melted and run down over the face, all you need is warm water to dissolve it. Don't need any solvents or anything crazy. Just warm water. Rock hard. Oh boy, this cabinet does look good. I have refinished one of these. In fact, it's right over here. And although mine came out really nice, nice hand rub lacquer finish, what's tricky to do on these is that there's a subtle shading effect. The top and the outer bits of trim are actually a little bit darker than the inner part. I was able to do that by putting, I actually did use stain on that as I recall, and I used 2 layers of stain on this and none on this, or something along those lines. It's been a little while since I did it. Now I think I might have, I do know I have 2 spare plastic covers, but those are from suitcase sets, so I'm not sure if they'll work, but I'm going to go grab one right now and see if I can use it on the front of this set. I managed to dig up both of my spare fronts, but unfortunately they're both the, well, I wouldn't call it a full porthole style, but certainly not the same as these sets. Although it's perfect length, perfect height, it's got that bump out for the display. With a bit of woodwork you could probably get it to fit, and it certainly would be a novel, unique VT71, but not exactly stock. I can ask around. I know plenty of these have been scrapped out, unfortunately, over the years. I bet somebody's got one that would fit in here. Because as I look at it more, this is actually in better condition than I realized, and I don't think it deserves being scrapped out just because it's missing a face. The knobs for the mahogany are the most common, not too tough to dig up, plus I think reproduction, actually I know reproductions are made for it. Could use a bit of refinishing, at least on this piece. Now this piece does come off. You can see it's loose already, just one screw on either side, so this can be refinished on its own. I can leave the rest of the cabinet untouched, just be a matter of matching the colors. And as you can see, this one's also opened up underneath. As you can see how easy it is for these parts to get damaged when the bottoms are missing, because everything is so exposed. Just from people like carrying this around, like grabbing it here and just busting parts off, breaking coils. This doesn't look too bad. In fact, since we can see it so well, I'm not going to bother to pull this chassis out. 2 seleniums, there's the orange Mighty Midget, and yada yada, just like we've seen in the 2 sets. I've started doing a little cleaning on the cabinet, and it turns out that it is in pretty good condition, just like I had hoped. First, I did a couple passes with Novus, both to clean it and polish off the gunk and clean the latex paint splatters. And then I use some McGuire's cleaner wax. So it's just on this side here. And looks quite good, I think. So far, just a light scratch. I can't even see it. There it is. No big deal. And I think the rest of the cabinet will turn out just as nice. Here are my two 7VT2s. The one on the right is the one that was broken in half and it's been glued. Doesn't look bad, but the right angle, you can tell where it's been cracked. And it's been a while since I looked at it. I can now see that the seam is actually even more noticeable, probably from going through a couple seasons of cooler and warmer weather. It's become more noticeable. So that's why I really want to go with this cabinet. And here are the knobs. These are gold knobs on the outside, but since I got them, they're starting to get a little bit of white on them, as they often do. And here are the red knobs I was using. So now I'm close. If I can just get a gold version of that red channel knob there, I'll have a correct set. And here is the squiggle logo. It goes up here. So what I propose doing is combine these two sets and make the best one that I can, and whatever's left over, which will namely be the cabinet and the faceplate and the screen on there, somebody's welcome to it. But if I try shipping this, I suspect it's going to crack back in half. And to be honest, if I was to do this again, I would, or even if I was to do any more work on this, I think I would break it apart again, take out the adhesive I put in there, and start over and try to use better materials. I used JB Weld and actually some wooden dowels across here to strengthen it. I think I'd search out different materials, probably use something like Bondo. I just don't know how much work it's worth. I know these are fairly desirable, but they do show up now and then, and I don't know. Alright, so anyways, my plan was to try out the 7JP4s I just picked up by hooking them to this set. Because the CRT connector in the back, you can disconnect it and just flip it around and hook it up to an external one. However, that's not going to happen with this one I just took out of the new 7VT2, because it's got a problem. A problem that's fairly common to these, but this is about the worst, or I think is the worst I've ever seen. And that's the pins have broken loose. So look at this. The base of the pin has broken loose from Bakelite on quite a few of these pins. And I wouldn't be surprised if that was related to the new socket that had been wired into this set. So I'm afraid if I tried attaching this big 14-pin socket to that CRT base, I could end up breaking or ripping these pins right out. Eventually what I'll try doing is, I do have one or two spare bases like this, and I could do some surgery on this. And this base is a little bit loose, so if I was to unsolder all these with a bit of force, I should be able to get this base off. I can transplant a new one on. That is going to be a bit of work. I'm not going to be doing it anytime soon because I've got other 7JP4s I can use. However, I can test this with my Suncor CR70, but perhaps I can test the 7JP4s in the other two Motorola sets. I managed to get the 7VT2 I had restored a while ago running. And like I said, it was a mess when I got it, and some of the remaining issues are coming back to me. One of which was that the fine-tuning had broken off. This should be a serrated shaft that's split down the middle, and then this would fit over it. But, of course, it doesn't now. I just put kind of a screw threaded shaft on there. But now that I've got some spare chassis, like the one that came with the other set that's a mess, I can probably salvage control out of that. Another issue is that the antenna connector on the back doesn't tighten down, this top screw, so it's really loose right now, so I'm getting some interference on the picture. That being said, this set does work, so it's certainly good enough to test the other picture tubes.
Now what's wrong with that? Now I have some private business here with a doctor, and as for you, you're going...
My plan had been to disconnect the CRT socket here and twist it around and plug it into another set back to back, but it turns out the wires just are not long enough. There are a couple going down in here that are just hanging it up, and I can't quite get it, because I not only have to turn it around, I also need to rotate it like that, and it's just not gonna happen. So I'm just gonna use my Suncor CR70 tester for now. Oh, and while we're down here, you can see that lovely JB Weld and dowel reinforcing job under there. It's what I use to secure the top back together. I also take a look at some of the other issues with this chassis. So one, this screw is broken, so it won't tighten down, and that's what holds the antenna input on. So I was getting static in the picture. And another problem is that the original speaker was missing with this set, so I put a Japanese speaker in there. But now that I've got some spare parts, I can get this thing all back to stock. Now, as for the 7JP4s, first up here is the one that came in the 7VT2 black Bakelite cabinet with the loose pins. Now, 7JP4 is not listed in my standard CR70 lookup chart, but luckily I got a cheat sheet from somebody who I think may have had an older model that listed a lot more oscilloscope type CRTs. Those are all the P1 phosphor, that's green phosphor. And what do you know? There's a 7JP4, and you can see it's listed as an oscilloscope tube, not a video tube. So I've got it all set up, and I think we've got filament glow. Can't see it. Oh yeah, no, I can. But one way you can tell if the filament's glowing with the CR70 is that, well, I'll show you. If I turn this off and I disconnect one of the filament connections, and then turn this on while it's in the fill set position, you see if I turn this control all the way down, this is what adjusts the filament voltage. With no load, it's almost at 6 volts. And if I turn it up all the way, it can go over 7. With a load on it, it drags that reading down to the level 4 volts at the lowest position. And you have to turn it up almost all the way to get to 6.3. Alright. Shoots. Cut off. Nothing. The emissions are strong. Now I've come to realize that this doesn't mean everything. I think every 7JP4 I've ever tested shows really good emissions. Assuming the filament isn't blown, and as memory serves, I've yet to encounter a 7JP4 with a blown filament. So in other words, yeah, every 7JP4 I've come across, which is over, I don't know, it's got to be at least a dozen by now. They've all tested good, but when you put them in a running set, they do not all look the same, because there is no ion trap in these. But they also don't get a brown spot in the middle typically like a magnetic set would, because the ions are deflected evenly with the electron beam. So if you had one that was really burned, you would actually have a brown rectangle on the front of it, not a spot, like on a magnetic deflection set. Why, you ask? Well, I guess the electrostatic deflection plates deflect both electrons and ions. And the magnetic deflection set the ions are not deflected by the magnetic field, only the electrons are. So the electrons move back and forth over the screen, but the ions all get focused right down the middle, and you get a brown spot right in the middle of the screen. So what I'm getting at is a high hour 7JP4 may test fine, but the phosphor's actually been damaged by ion bombardment, and it's just not that bright when you actually fire it up. However, this is a good sign. I'll do a life test, and yeah, figured the needle barely drops, just like every other 7JP4 I've tested. But that's a good enough indicator to tell me that this should produce an image. How bright? Can't tell until I put it into a working set. Next up is the blonde set. Again, good sign, low filament. So crank that up. Can't see glowing, but that's because of the crude aluminum foil shield they put around these things. Oh, we can read the meter. It's a little funky. Well, as long as it stays in the green, that's fine. These shorts tests are pretty sensitive. Now this one has cutoff. The first one I tested, couldn't get any cutoff control. This one I can. So that first CRT might have some contrast issues. And emissions. Actually, these are a bit higher than the previous CRT, so that one may be a bit worn out. Solid life test. Alright, that leaves one more to test. And finally, the mahogany set. It's been over a week since I recorded the earlier parts of this video, so forgive me if I'm repeating myself, but I have located a plastic bezel that's appropriate for this model. So when that arrives, I think that'll be all I need to restore this set. When I initially won this auction, I just assumed that I would be scrapping this one out, but it turns out the cabinet is actually in pretty darn good condition, all things considered. Sure, some scuffs up here, but these are very, very shallow. And I like the original coloring on this. Nice rich finish. Oh, I'll have to take the back off this to test the CRT. And that's another plus for this set, that it has the original back. Now we can also take a peek inside this set for the first time. See right away we've got a tube missing. That's a 6SL7. Looks like all the rest are still there. And it still has an old ballast. Let's see, there's one more tube hiding in front of the high voltage box. Yep, it's there. So, you know, what I just might do to finish this video off is replace that 6SL7 and try a little controlled power up to this set. What the heck? I suspect nothing will happen because the ballast is probably bad, or it soon will be once I power it up, but, you know, might be a little fun conclusion to the video. Just found this tag inside, probably from the auction. RCA, CRT, it's probably the original because it's mounted in here very well. Usually when these get replaced, they're a little bit sloppy with replacing all this stuff. Motorola never made their own CRTs, so they would have to source them from somebody else. Pins are all nice and solid. Okay, here's the third and final 7JP4. Just like with the other two, low filament, good sign. That one is completely covered up by the shielding, so no chance of seeing a glow, so we'll have to go off the meter reading again. Good, good. No cutoff control on this one either. We're just barely at the very bottom edge. But the emissions are... so say the emissions are good. Well, now they're good. Maybe I'll let this guy cook for a little while. That was weird. Maybe there's some crap burning off inside. Whoa, now I have cutoff control. Cutoff control like crazy. Considering how this thing has been kicked around the country, traveling from the East Coast, who knows what kind of bit of crap might have been floating around inside. Shorting something out or whatever. Tap the base a little bit. Well, seems to be solid and good now. Solid, fairly solid life test. Alright, so I'll get out my Variac and dim bulb set up and all that, and let's see if I can make this set do something. I just noticed something on this chassis. When I cleared off the dust, I could see that it has stamped on there, uses ballast, blah 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 blah, which turns out to be the newer type ballast, and I happen to have a few nice glass amperite replacements, far more reliable than these old exposed mica ones. These have some type of gas inside, I believe it's hydrogen, that actually helps conduct the heat to the exterior while protecting the wires from oxidizing. I dug up some knobs that were missing from the front of the set. I replaced the missing 6SL7, hooked up a cheater AC line cord into a 150 watt light bulb and into a Variac. So let's see what happens. Now what I suspect is going to happen is that the ballast is bad. But we shall find out in a moment. Actually, what I'm going to do, I'm going to turn the Variac off, turn the set on, and I'll just leave it on up front, and then I can control everything from the back side. So here goes. The light bulb lit up real bright. That's a good sign. Because if the ballast was bad, the light bulb wouldn't light up. I can also see 6SL7 lighting up feebly. Now there are two independent... Oof, I can smell that ballast warming up. Decades of dust burning on it. There are two separate filament chains. So it's possible for half the tubes to light up and the other half not to, but no. I see tubes on both sides lighting up. So even these 6S, or it's actually 12SN7s, although they're kind of dim. Gotta make sure not to get close to that. Those actually get so hot. It's just, ooh, light bulb just flickered, almost went out. Oh, there it goes. Or it's starting to flicker off. Could be because the ballast is crapping out. Oh, crackle on the speaker. Huh. I'm going to let it sit here for a while, let the caps form up a bit, assuming that it can form up. Also check them periodically to see if they're getting hot, and then I'll increase the juice a bit. I let the set run for about 10 minutes, doing it several minutes at a time and turning it off for a while, then back on. And I didn't notice any smoke or feel any hot electrolytics, so I've removed the bulb from the set, and I'm going to try power it up one more time. The tube's lighting up brighter now without that light bulb in line to restrict the current flow. I don't see the CRT illuminating from the back side. It's a little bit of an arc though. Real common problem with these sets is that the high voltage caps start cracking out and arcing, which may very well be why I don't have any high voltage. There's no image on the screen. That sound though. I'm not gonna let it run any longer. You can smell burning odors coming from it. It's probably from the ballast, but well, actually, now that I just remember the back cover is missing from the set, so I'm gonna tip it on its side. And let's take a look underneath. So here's a look underneath this set, and some of these caps look like they've been oozing, but I don't feel hot right now, so that might be from long ago. And these are the caps that typically leak. See, one's been replaced already. Well, actually, I think two have. Suspect there might be some arcing down in there. That's what's killing my high voltage. Or, you know, plenty of other problems with probably all these paper caps are leaky. I'm also glad that the selenium rectifiers didn't let loose and fill my place up with some stink. That was a nice little old spider colony down in there. I'm going to try one more time. I'm going to turn the lights off and look for any arcing down in there. These are fairly finicky sets even after they've been fully recapped, so I'm not exactly surprised I can't get any raster on the screen. Okay, here goes one more power up test. I heard a crack like before, but it sounds like it's actually coming from the other side of the chassis. So it could be an issue inside the high voltage cage. Still sound. Yeah, I'm not going to mess with it anymore. I don't like all those cracking sounds, but it's very promising. Very promising. Here's a look at that 7VT2 cabinet after a bit of cleaning. I also did glue the broken out piece of Bakelite on the bottom. Fit in there quite nicely. So far I just used super glue just to hold it in place, and later I'll mix up some 2-part epoxy and apply it from the inside, and I think I'll use a Dremel tool and cut some notches in the plastic to give the epoxy more to grip onto. But even as is, it's in there pretty solid. There's not a whole lot of stress on it, so I'm not that concerned about it. I'd mentioned that the logo was missing. Well, here's what it looks like. In fact, well, this is one, but I only have one between my two sets. Clips on from the back. I guess they fall out over time. And then here's the knob situation. So if anybody has the gold version of this red channel knob, I'd really like to hear from you. Otherwise, I'm close. Antique Radio Club of Illinois Swap Fest is coming up in a few weeks, so maybe I'll get lucky. That's where I got these two otter knobs. Alright, that's going to be it for now. I hope you enjoyed this look at the 3 7-inch Motorola sets I got from the Elli Buk auction a few weeks ago.